Hey Avi, what's up, man? Welcome to the Mike and Shots podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. And it's a pleasure to do a podcast with you. Quite an interesting format that you have come up with.
Thank you so much, man.
Sorry, I'm
And
not sure. The Alexa is not sure. I'll just mute it.
it's okay. Yeah.
Alexa is not sure if the format is good or not, but yeah, I'm quite sure.
So, I'm very excited to have you here on this episode because I discovered you on Tyke, right? And you're doing something which is pretty exciting right now in the world, which is smart factories. We'll definitely talk more about it. But before going there, Avi, I think it makes sense for us to just have a brief intro about you. So, you are the CEO and futurist at TWYN Technologies, right? And you've worked with a lot of companies before that in the smart factory domain, I can say, or the industry 4.0 domain, probably. So you come with a lot of experience over there. And throughout the conversation, I'll try and understand more about Industry 4.0. Where do various technologies fit in over there, like IoT, AI, probably, right? We'll talk about machine learning. And I also discovered something called as dark factories. Probably you have some idea about that as well. So we'll
Absolutely.
try and shed some light on that. And then we'll move on to entrepreneurship, about your side of the world, right? So over to you, man. I want you to shed a little bit more light on your background and then we'll begin.
So basically, I started my career working as a technology consultant. I had a good fortune of starting right with Google, none other than Google. Worked there for quite some time, and then early on in my career, I was very fortunate that the technology domain was just coming up at that point of time. And again, this is 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now. At that point of time, I was consulting for brands like Philips, Hewells, Maruti, and the likes, Panasonic, and then the likes. So early on, I got a good exposure in terms of how the technology transformation is happening, how it is disrupting various industries, and what are corporates doing to gear up with it. So what that led to exactly is when my particular job description is being a futurist. So my job is to visualize how the world is going to be 20, 30, 50 years down the lane, and how those changes are just beginning right now, and that disruption is coming in, and how industries need to change, and what do they need to change to adapt to the new world.
Interesting. So, I'll begin with the stuff that you're building twin technologies, right? How did you come up with the idea of twin, right? And smart factories, essentially.
Yeah, so that was right from the start that I was very passionate about technology, and I wanted to get into the technology space only that's there. So, working as a technology consultant, as I told you, I got exposure going into some of the biggest factories in India. And I had seen this show called Mega Factories. I think a lot of
Yeah.
fans of this show are already there in Nat Geo. And at that point of time, I imagined these factories to be like hubs of cutting edge technology, wherein robots are doing everything, and that was the expectation. But when I would not like to name the brand exactly, but it is a Fortune 100 company. But when I entered the manufacturing plant, which is kilometers and kilometers, I was gravely disappointed in terms of. It seems like that they are still using technologies from 1980s and 90s, and then I immediately picked up that this is one sector that is due for disruption right now. Because if you see how many students or how get an exposure to factories, like how many people around you, you pick up 10 people, how many of them would have gone to an actual manufacturing plant?
Not many. Yeah.
Everybody wants to focus and build the next big app or the next big aggregation model or
Yeah.
an e-commerce website and the likes. So nobody pays attention to these core industries that are there. So that is why the unicorns are not coming out of it, and that is why we are in this industry.
So you talked about visiting a factory, like, which was huge, right? So what did you observe? Like, I know that you observed that all practices were there, and you observed anything specific which kind of opened your eyes, like, okay, this is missing over here, and I've seen that somewhere else. Stuff like that.
A lot of things. I mean, not just missing, but practices which are not required.
Hmm.
So I saw somebody pick up a metal frame, basically a metal frame out of a furnace from hands, of course with gloves and everything,
Yeah.
but like molten metal dropping in from there and picking it up from, and I was shocked that that this is how things are actually happening in the manufacturing plants. I asked somebody was assembling an engine transmission, and both of these parts, one part is 7 kg, another part is 5 kg. and the person does it 500 times in a day,
Wow.
and it's a redundant task which is just picking and placing things up. So even painting in some places does not happen with complete robots, which is, I mean, paint is carcinogenic. So a lot of these safety hazards that were there kind of triggered me, and I thought this is something that is not. Of course, there were other small inconsistencies. Being a technologist, you might find it weird, but I went there and I asked them that how is this, like the data from this machine, there was a PLC, there's something called a programmable logic controller
Okay.
that is connected to a machine there. I asked, what is this? It says it's a computer that takes in data. And back then, it was like very, very early on in my career. So I didn't have that kind of exposure. It takes in the data and it just gives out through sensors, and it just gives out the output. And I was like,
Okay.
why can a small single board computer cannot do this?
Hmm.
So the kind of this technology, I found out that this technology is 20, 25 years old, and they are still using those legacy ports and technologies and not willing to upgrade. So yeah, these small inefficiencies that were there, these safety hazards that were there, that really got to me. And I was like, this is not necessary. And just use of technology, this can be eliminated and cost benefits can be realized. So why not? And we're also not talking about these, we're not talking about small factories that are in homes or anywhere. We're talking about large manufacturing plants, some of the biggest companies in the world.
Right. And I've, during my research, I saw that countries like China, like the US and Germany, they've like adopted smart factories in a big, big way, followed by, say, South Korea and other countries as well, right? And probably through your experience across these factories and all, you might have discovered the fact that, Industry 4.0 is the next level of manufacturing and, say, the factories, right? I want to learn more about Industry 4.0, and even the listeners would like to learn more about Industry 4.0. What is Industry 4.0? And what were it's basically a revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. And what were the revolutions before this, even, just to set the context right?
So Industry 4.0 is basically the fourth industrial revolution. It's a short form of which is used to refer to the fourth industrial revolution. So that being said, as the name suggests, there have been three revolutions before this. So this is the fourth one, and it is in progress. So how technology evolves is not in isolation, but in tandem with other technologies. So everything is linked together. So let's say if you talk about IoT or edge computing, and we talk about a lot of these IoT systems coming in and their communication with each other. So that is where 5G comes in terms of, if 5G will not be there, this communication and everything, the bandwidth will not be there. So for one technology to evolve, other technologies also need to evolve along with it, and one thing leads to the other. And that's why once a lot of these technologies are evolving together and entering a new phase, it is referred to as an industrial revolution, because it is maybe a landmark that is happening. So when we are in the revolution, it's not necessary that we are, it is evident that we are now, so like right now we are in the fourth industrial revolution and it's already happening. To a large extent, it has happened in a lot of places, and then there are still gaps in there. And these are terms that are loosely defined per se. So for, it's not a concrete definition that these five technologies fall under this. And once this happens, now we have concretely entered into the next phase, but it is more like a very dynamic thing. So the first revolution started loosely when the steam and mechanization started happening, because before that humans used to do the manual work and all the production was hand done. Then when the steam and mechanization started to happen, it was a landmark. The delta of the change that happened was significant, so we refer to as a revolution. Secondly, when electricity came in, it is referred to as the say motorization and everything, the loosely referred to as second industrial revolution. But again, a lot of things, or a lot of other technologies are also changing, and a lot of other things are also coming in. And loosely, when computers started to come in, that's referred to the third industrial revolution per se, because now even intelligent work and everything can be intelligent, not in the true sense of that particular word, can also be taken care. Fourth industrial revolution, which we are in today, is led by the edge computing, virtual reality, IoT based systems, and all of those. And the next one, fifth industrial revolution, is also in the percept now, which is
Okay.
being led by AI. So
All
yeah,
right.
I mean, these are very loosely translated terms per se.
Yeah, 100%. And through your experience, like being a futurist and being worked in these companies, which is like, just wanted to know out of curiosity, which is the smartest factory you've been to? Is there any one which is like you've been to a crazy one?
So I think the craziest factory that I would refer to is the BMW factory that has just come up. But it's a complete digital factory. I mean, a particular part of it is a complete digital factory, wherein we are talking about one layer above. Smart factories, of course, that is smart factory manufacturing intelligence is one layer. A layer about that, above that is digital manufacturing and digital twins per se. So it is world's first effective factory with a digital twin in there. And whatever is happening in the manufacturing plant, you can visualize it outside. So I think I would call that a landmark manufacturing unit.
Interesting, because you mentioned digital twin, and I would like to know more about it because it's like a brand new concept, probably. And somewhere down the line, does it also involve virtual reality and augmented reality at its core?
Certainly, certainly. So these are the technologies, the framework technologies that make digital twin a reality. It requires your metaverse, it requires extended reality, it requires blockchain, it requires edge computing, it requires industrial IoT, it requires 4G and communication, 5G and
Yeah.
communication. So a lot of these technologies coming together would result in a digital twin. So if I very simply explain the concept, again, everything has different layers, but the ultimate paramount concept, if I per se, if I put forward, as the owner of a manufacturing plant that has you put in your glasses, your augmented reality glasses, which would have, let's say, possibly the form factor of regular glasses. A globe comes in front of you, wherein it would geographically show you contextually where all your plants are located. You touch one particular plant on your table, it opens up. It is augmented on top of that, and once you press a certain point in it, you're able to virtually walk in that particular plant as you're walking in the real plant. While this is happening, the entire thing is live, synchronized. So if one person is walking in that plant or the machine is functioning, same thing is happening here. So it's twin basically is a jodwa. That it's like whatever is happening at one place is happening in the other place. So this is a digital replica, a complete digital mirror image and a live mirror image of a factory or a plant. So,
And what are the benefits of having a digital twin? Like, what does it, how does it benefit like any factory in a way?
I mean, it is going to completely change the game and transform the game entirely. It's not a question of benefits. It's a question of the delta of this transformation would be so high that manufacturing is not going to be the same. So what is going to happen is delta of the transformation of this, how the manufacturing is going to change after that would be so high that it's not going to be same. So imagine a completely new operating system or a completely new way to interact with your plants. So normally we every product has a product life cycle, right? That this product has a life cycle of 5 years. Every year it gets upgraded and all. But we never look at factories as products. We can look with this particular concept. We can look at factories as a product that has a life cycle of 30 years. And if a product has a life cycle of 30 years, imagine the improvements that can happen in the factories. But rarely any improvements happen per se. So with this concept, you can see that if a factory is in China, the robotics company is in Germany, the designer is in South Africa, and the consultant can be from India, and all of these people can gather around a virtual in a virtual world, in a virtual simulated twin,
Yeah.
and can make different changes in the factories. So now they can decide, let's update the software of this robot. Once they update the software of the robot, and then using a simulator, they can
Yeah.
simulate what result it will get and how the robot will improve the efficiency of that process. And it's
Yeah.
not tied to a real factory right now. But once they know that the improvement in this one particular process is, let's say, 10%, 15%, then they can just press synchronize button and the changes will be synchronized from the twin to the real factory. So imagine every quarter them gathering out in this particular plant and doing such changes, and 1 to 2% improvement happens in the factories every quarter. For companies like Toyota or Volkswagen or PNG, this would translate into, I mean, millions and millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. And again, I'm just scratching the surface because again, the answer of the question will be too long, but it is going to completely change. And I can diverge down into it as to what other possibilities it opens up. But yeah, that's just scratching the surface.
No, I got it. And since we're talking about smart factories and stuff, what is the opportunity here? Like, it's just starting out, right? And we can go a long way. So, any idea on the opportunity size? What's going to happen?
So digital transformation is globally a $600 billion market right now, and by 2027, it's going to be a $1,500 billion market.
Billion.
So it's
Okay.
going to get a CAGR of more than 21.5%, roughly.
Wow.
And you can see it's mammoth that is moving. I mean, it's a blue whale moving at the speed of a swordfish. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of it's a big, huge market moving at a huge pace. Now, all of the global Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 100 companies have a goal that in terms of by 2030 will be completely digitally transformed. By 2025 will be partially digitally transformed. They also have sustainability goals in terms of carbon emissions, or they have to be carbon neutral or carbon negative. They have operational efficiency goals, which is by Kaizen,
Hmm.
which is constant improvements in processes. They have worker safety goals. So all of these goals are can only be realized with digital transformation. And since they have a separate budget for it, and since they have digital transformation officers now, so this is a huge focus area. And relatively, there are very few people into this particular space, because you would terabytes and terabytes of data needs to be collected for this to happen.
Hmm.
The deployments would be in such scales that the sensors that would be required for this kind of making this kind of twin would not be in millions. Billions of sensors is what we are talking about, and no
Hmm.
one individual company can do this. And so there is a huge potential for any entrepreneur that is looking forward to within this particular space.
Interesting. And before we move on to the other segment, tell me more about AI, because AI right now is kind of booming in a way that natural language processing, ChatGPT, Google Bard, and stuff are just coming in. How can AI? It's also part of Industry 5.0, which is the next revolution that's coming in. How can AI essentially like improve manufacturing or improve the factories or make it more like productive? Shed some more light on that, please.
So I mean, where can it not impact? That should be the question. So starting with the things like predictive maintenance. So what if I tell you, even before a machine breaks down in your manufacturing plant, a week in advance, the AI can predict that the machine is going to break down in the future
Hmm.
and generates an alert for you, and then you can fix up that particular point. What is happening is, people say that data is the new oil, right? But data has failed to be the new oil in
Hmm.
manufacturing industry.
Okay.
95% data that is generated in manufacturing specifically is never used, because
Hmm.
data in itself has no value if the
Yep.
analytics or models are not there on top of it. So you can the easiest analogy that I can make here is, imagine a security guard watching over 500 cameras or 5,000 cameras, and it's in the screen in front of him. I mean, what will it lead
Yeah.
to really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So because and manual analytic models that are made are not that scalable. So if I'm
Hmm.
making a custom manual algorithm based model, it would not be very scalable. So there would be a lot of machine learning involved, and because of that, there's a lot of potential of use of this data in terms of analytics and improvements. So predictive maintenance I just talked about. I can also talk about audits that can be made
Hmm.
using visual data and both data that is collected otherwise. We can talk about analyzing the bottlenecks in the entire process. We can talk about human resource management, as to giving efficiency score or productivity score or safety score to people. We can talk about use of computer vision in quality control, so analyzing the defects into certain products that they are made. So we can talk about how your inventory is moving
Yeah.
vis-a-vis, let's say in September or October, the seasons are changing. So how your warehouse should be realigned as to what has to be put outside so that the pickup time gets reduced by 1.5 seconds. So I mean, the thing is, where it cannot be used would be the question, as necessarily.
Superb, man. And you've talked about these things, right? Now, where does Twin fit over here? Like, how do you go to folks and talk about these things? Like, what do you do, like in general, in terms of
Yeah.
solving this problem?
So, if you understand, our target market is basically Fortune 500 companies only, because at this point of time, the benefits are more realized in that particular direction. Now, what we are saying is they are already collecting terabytes and terabytes of data.
Hmm.
But there are four key challenges that all of the people face, and the
Hmm.
targets of the factories are. Number one being Kaizen, which is a Japanese concept meaning continuous improvements in the process, continuous improvements in efficiency and everything. Second is total safety, that might translate to worker safety and cyber security both. Then Six Sigma, which is a concept which means 99.6664% accuracy that is required in the production and the products. And the last being the sustainability development goals, carbon emissions and sustainable development goals. So these are the targets that every Fortune 500 company has and is completely focusing on. Now, to explain why a digital twin is the best solution for achieving these, because now the supply chains are disrupting. Everything is completely changing. And even if you're collecting data, if the data does not have context, the data is useless. I'll take an example of using Google Maps, right? So before Google Maps came in, you used to have 2D paper-based maps. Now everything was mentioned in the map that this is the road, this is the name of the road, this is the direction. But because the data wasn't contextualized into, as in it was not superimposed or put on the real world, the map wasn't really useful. For some of us who have a very analytical mind, they can read the spreadsheets and all and try to analyze the data in a little better manner. But for most of us who are visual thinkers and collaborative thinkers, a spreadsheet or things might not make sense. So right now, what I'm talking about is the analogy that I'm trying to make is collecting data from systems and just displaying them on 2D screens or paper production data is similar to giving 2D maps to people. But now after Google Maps, you have turn by turn navigation, and when you are at that particular point, it's asking you to turn. So there is context to the data which is overlaid on real world, and that's where our digital twin comes in. So 50 people can gather around and see a problem, and then they can analyze things like, oh, because there is so much of clogging in this particular warehouse, this point is built in such a manner that traffic gets built up here. That's why the forklifts are getting stuck. So there is some real world context to that particular data rather than just seeing the pickups. And that's where digital twin comes in. Why data has failed in manufacturing is because it's lacking context, and it can only be given context in an immersive in a visual world. So that's where twin comes in.
So exciting to hear all this, because tech is moving at a fast pace right now. And when you go to a customer and talk about all these things, have you observed the fact that what's the mindset of the customers? Like, that was the question. Like, are they open enough to adopt such a technology shift change, or are they still adamant and they want to stick to industry 3.0 stuff, which has been there, the legacy stuff? What's
See,
your
if
point?
I be very realistic and open with it, is different markets are behave in a different manner. Ours is a market that is very heavy on contract-based manufacturing. So basically, we would produce goods for companies or OEMs that are outside of India, governed by certain processes and things. So at the end, the thing is, when the pressure will come from the OEM, that is when the transformation should happen. And until then, the cost of these inefficiencies are basically overlooked upon. And there is comparatively less focus on in terms of sustainability, worker safety, and other things in here. But that is of course changing. So a lot of promises are there. But other than that, Indian manufacturers like Maruti Group are one of our clients. Jindal Steel is one of our clients in the Indian context. So yeah, there are people who are willing to change this and take the lead. Markets outside India are much more receptive to this particular transformation, because I mean, there we don't have to have conversations in terms of why this needs to be done. There people are confused in terms of digital transformation has to be done, no doubts about it. There's a budget for it, there are people that they are hiring for it, and all of those things are there. But there's so much confusion in market that this one particular digital transformation can be done in 200 ways. So what is the best way of doing digital transformation? So there's a lot of confusion and all out there. So it's more of an education-based approach or consultative-based approach that we have to take there. And again, it's also depending on industry. So if it is a process industry like petroleum, oil refineries, or steel industry, they're already collecting a lot of data, because all of their furnaces, machines, and all the stakes are very high, are monitored. So it's easy for them to implement this compared to a industry like fashion industry, cloth industry, wherein work is so much manual that the basic automation is not done. So forget about collecting data and making a twin. So yeah, that's the realistic idea of the market.
Right. So, just curious about the fact that the transformation has a cost to it. And probably you realize the cost later. So from your perspective, is cost a challenge, or basically if
100%.
yeah.
100%. So, if we talk about the very technology, this has existed since 1970s. One of the first digital twins, if I'm not wrong about the year, was done in 1969 by NASA in Apollo 13.
Hmm.
So the astronauts in Apollo 13 were saved using a digital twin. So the basis of this technology has always existed. But as I'm telling you, technology doesn't evolve in silos. It evolves in tandem and in collaboration with other technologies. So right now, since the other technologies have caught up, this is the right time for it to be done. But that being a thing, when cost is a real challenge. Now the MNCs and all that are working on this particular concept, once they take into account that billions of sensors need to be put into places and the data needs to be collected and processed and everything, it becomes such ginormous task that the
Hmm.
cost becomes obnoxious, and
Yeah.
it doesn't really get deployed. So that's what where our approach comes in. So what we are saying is we are doing scalable digital transformation that is connected and scalable, being the two key differentiating factors in here, wherein we have our own hardware that we have manufactured. We have our own software. We have our own drivers and protocols that we have written, which are compatible with legacy hardware and modern hardware, so that the cost can be kept at a bare minimum level in terms of the transformation becomes a reality. And also, the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. Other technologies are catching up. So this is the right time for this transformation to take place and for this transformation to happen. And again, the cost of not doing it is far more expensive because there are real problems. Giving an example, let's say you are Maruti, right? And I manufacture frames for you. But you are, let's say, any car manufacturer. Let's not take an example, take names. You are a car manufacturer. I manufacture car frames for you. And a customer, our viewers, one of the viewers has bought the car. And that particular car, even after buying, he or she has driven it for 5 years, and a problem has come in welding of the frame. Do you know the implications of this particular problem? I, as the frame manufacturer, has to recall the entire lot, the entire batch of frames, just
Yeah.
because one person 5 years down the lane had a problem with a welding
Right.
of one particular frame. And if you think that these things don't happen, just in last 20 years, 3,500 such recalls have happened
Wow.
just in US. And the cost of each recall, can you humor me with a number? What would be the cost of one such recall?
Must be multiple millions.
$2 billion
Wow.
average. So that is quality control in an automobile industry in a country. I mean, that's the scale of the problem. But again, the cost implications is enormous. So cost of not doing it is much more expensive, because at the end of the day, the first movers will get advantage of this and disrupt the manufacturing.
Interesting, because you pointed out these things, and I could gather that efficiency is definitely that's going to be there through Industry 4.0. Then quality of the products will definitely improve, as you talked about recalls, right? And then there's another concept which I read about is something called as dark factories, which
Yeah, yeah.
factories operating without like humans and any light and human supervision and stuff. So is that a reality, or is that something only a story which I read about? Like, are these factories
No,
there?
that's very much a reality, and it's happening today. Of
Okay.
course, some industries quicker than others. So the concept, loosely translated in a very shrewd manner, means that in the factory of the future, there will be two organisms, a man and a dog. The man will feed the dog, and the dog will ensure that the man doesn't touch anything. That's the basic concept of a dark factory. Let's simplify this, understanding certain industries. Let's take example of pharmaceutical industry and cosmetics industry. So both of these industries, they require certain compounds. There are certain input compounds that are there, let's say essential oil. There is certain matrix or media that is being used. There are certain chemicals that are being used, and they are processed under certain temperature and certain pressure
Hmm.
to give rise to final compounds. So
Yeah.
it's a process like that. Now, since there are people today who have real not just as a concept, who are working and who have demonstrated and delivered factories that are completely capable of putting in. So, let's say you just put in the formulation using a QR code, you put in the formulation in that particular autonomous or a dark factory per se, and you will get the end product. You can get a
Okay.
batch of one product, or you can run it for a batch of 10 to 15,000 products a day, and it becomes a whole decentralized kind of
Yeah.
a factory system, wherein you, let's say, you don't have to go for supply chain or distribution, because the factory is just as big as a room, and that
Okay.
particular factory you can keep into 200 places, so that
Wow.
logistics and all, whatever you need to produce, and 10 OEMs can just tell them that this is my formulation, can be manufactured and distributed. Now put this on a digital twin, a digital replica, because remote monitoring is of course needed for a
Yeah.
factory like that. And you put it on in a metaverse, in a blockchain, and you just hear me out, and bear with me here, and put it as decentralized autonomous organizations, as a DAO.
Yeah.
So I make an investment of 1 crore in this particular dark factory, and I put something I divide it into the investments of 1 lakh and put it on a platform like Tyke, or make some platform for it. And if all those 1 lakh and 100 users put in 1 lakh to get that 1 crore factory. Using smart contracts, somebody can just put in an order for XYZ, just like you put in an order in an e-commerce website,
Correct.
and then the factory automatically starts to function, and the profits at the end of the day are distributed to all these decentralized owners of that particular manufacturing plant. So
Oh my
yeah.
God. This is so crazy, yaar. I haven't heard anything like this ever in my life.
That's what most of the people that I pitch to, or that I usually work with internationally also, say. But this
Yeah.
is very much a reality. You have
Hmm.
to realize how technology is progressing. People say that metaverse is a farce, or I mean, all of these technologies will never catch up. It's the very nature of how things are. Very simply, you understand this. Today, there are metaverse experiences that exist, wherein if you put in the headset, they match the resolution of human eye almost, so 8K in each eye, and you cannot tell the product that is in front of you is real or artificial.
Okay. Yeah.
Will you put the glasses and you'll not be able to tell that they'll put some real product in it, they'll put some artificial virtual product in it. It is so
100%.
photorealistic, you'll not be able to tell this table is real and this table is not real.
Yeah.
Now it's only a matter of time where the form factor actually reduces to the form factor of normal glasses. I mean,
Yes.
that too has happened by some companies like North and everything, but those quality is yet to be done. So it's only a matter of time wherein both things fuse, and that happens 10 years down the lane. And with all
Yes.
the digital twins and digital transformation coming in, why would you show your customer? Why would you take your customer to a physical factory and show it to them there? You would just ask them to put in your glasses. You will sit in at your home and they'll take a tour. You can imagine AI based robots doing audits there.
Yeah.
Audits happens once in a year in a factory. So our AI robot can keep scanning in the factory day in and day out, and do not only data based audits but visual audits of how things are looking and
Hmm.
moving. So it's only a matter of why. How can this not happen? Why would it not happen? Any sane person would be able to predict that this is going to happen. It's only a matter of time.
Crazy, man, because that was supposed to be my next question. Like, is this really the future? Like, do you see this as the future, or it's going to take a lot of time to reach that? But what do you think? Like, is this really the future?
100%, it
Yeah.
cannot be avoided.
Yeah.
So as we are saying, we have shifted to Zoom calls now.
Hmm.
I'll give you one option to choose,
Yeah.
right? So this podcast that we are doing, we can do it on a 2D screen that is right in front of you, and a 2D screen that's in front of me, and you're seeing
Yeah.
my video, I'm seeing your video. And the other is, I'll give you glasses that you can just put on your eyes, which are
Yeah.
form factor of real, I mean, normal glasses that are there.
Yeah.
And you'll not be able to recognize my virtual avatar that is in front of you is real or not, and we can have conversations one on one like that. If the technology is there, which one would you choose?
The 2D glasses one is, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
there is no doubt about that. It's only a matter of time, because such experiences today they exist,
Yeah.
which you will not be able to tell what is real and what is not. And similarly, such form factors today exist. Only 5 to 10 years down the lane, you will be able to match both of the things, and they'll come to a cause that is scalable. First, it will be in defense and medical and industrial uses. Then it will slowly come down to the custom consumer level. It's not a matter of if it will happen or not. It is going to happen. It's only a matter of time.
And I was coming to the fact that some challenges will be there. Like from what I can understand is that research is definitely going on. That's going on, and a lot of money is being poured into research. Then adoption, right? Education. These are some of the challenges I foresee, like cost also. Is there any other challenge you foresee to such a technological revolution apart from these?
So technology exists today, honestly speaking. Only incremental upgrades are required in technology. Cost-wise, scalability and having a connectivity are the only two options that are
Yeah.
there. So getting all of these giant companies into one big platform, like, so let's say one company cannot make the metaverse. It's a combination wherein all of the people need to come together. So
Yep.
one is having an isolated XR experience at your home with your VR headset. That's a separate thing. I'm talking about the connectivity in
Yeah.
here, wherein all companies come to a central platform and you can have like that. So that is going to take a bit of time. That standardization of different technologies, protocols, and all of that, that's going to take time. And second is the scalability of cost of gathering so
Yeah.
much data from the sensors, and that. Other than that, there are no challenges. And though these two things have always been, if you see that the transition of the technology have always been addressed over a period of time. So I mean, nothing out of ordinary that we are talking about here in the scale of
Definitely.
grand things.
Please.
One thing that I would like to say is, like, as the opportunity, something that is very, very close to my heart, and why I became an entrepreneur and a tech entrepreneur specifically. So there are three types of basically countries that are there in the world. One of the countries are dependent on the innovation. So let's say Germans, Japanese, and Americans, they build technologies, they build patents for it, and then they capitalize on that. The second tier is countries like China, and Vietnam and other countries who are saying that we can manufacture it for you, even though we cannot innovate, we can manufacture it for you.
Yeah.
And thirdly, there are countries that really depend on providing the solutions for it. In terms of, they're saying we can provide services for it. We cannot innovate, we cannot manufacture, we can provide services for it. And sadly, that's the category that we are lying in at this moment. Although some of the most cutting edge, tech resources are from India.
Yep.
But that hasn't translated really to an innovation-based environment, or translated to entrepreneurs actually making that. We have been known as good managers, we have been known as good workers, we have been known as good researchers,
Correct.
but good risk takers and good innovators, not at the moment. But I think the potential is there. So I would request more and more people to take this particular route and work on the innovation. Let's not do a me too product, that one product exists globally and let's make it a cheaper product and just build it in India. Let's do something that is miles ahead.
Yes.
And that's what I would really urge people to do. Although the investor ecosystem and the ecosystem right now is not very supportive for hardware entrepreneurs per se, because the VC ecosystem in India has existed for, let's say, 10-15 years barely. And everybody has idea of SaaS-based startups or software or e-commerce-based startups. But hardware-based startups, wherein you do investments and and the incubation of the investment is 10, 15, 20 years, that concept is still alien to most of the investors community. So but we can start somewhere.
In fact, because you were talking about this, I had this question in mind. When you bring about such technological changes in the hardware side of the world, right? There's a section of the labor force which gets affected in a good and a bad way, right? So what will happen, like with Industry 4.0? Say, I know people are going to get affected, but there's going to be another workforce which is getting skilled, right, coming in, right? What's your perspective on that, like job and skill?
Okay, so one thing that I didn't want really to touch base upon, but since we are talking, yes. So we need to understand things in a globalization and macroeconomics context if we really need to understand the impact or the outcome for it. See, nobody wants that workers are out of the job or workers are replaced. I personally always being an entrepreneur and being responsible for 50 families, I always look forward to the long term development of people rather than just hiring and firing kind of a scenario. But if you see from a perspective of a person who's working in a who's owning a factory,
Yeah.
if I am making this particular keyboard per
Mm-hmm.
se, right? And there are 10 other factories that are producing this particular keyboard. Because of automation and because of mechanization, those particular factories can produce this keyboard in much more volumes, in a better quality,
Yeah.
and at a cheaper cost.
Yes.
Then who is going to buy this keyboard from my factory? Nobody is
Mm.
going to give me the contract for manufacturing in this, right?
Yeah.
And how long will I be able to take care of my workers? Even though I would not want to let them go, but the option is closing down the company or switching to automation. So
Yeah.
it's that kind of a challenge. Now, and these things cannot be guarded by policies or cannot be
Yeah.
forced by governments. It's capitalism at the end of the day, which is
Yes.
driving each and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand that automation and mechanization is going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, governments need to play a proactive role
Yeah.
in terms of making policies for adjusting the society to these
Correct.
particular changes. Like in globally, governments have already started to experiment with robotic tax
Mm.
and universal basic income. So
Mm.
basically taxing the robots that are working in the factories, getting taxes out of it, and then re-putting it in the economy and distributing it to
Yes.
people. They have analyzed long-term effects of it, whether people are usually wasting it
Mm.
or reinvesting in their education and all. Mostly, they are it's chosen to be very productive.
Yeah.
But again, we also need to keep in mind the basic psychological nature of human beings, which is
Yes.
the hierarchical context. It's not the matter of whether I am well-to-do or not. The idea is that I have to be better than I mean, my car has to be bigger than your car.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if
Yes.
I have a car and you have a car. So that's also I mean, a lot of complex things need to be taken
Correct.
into account. Having said that, I imagine a utopian future wherein human beings would pursue or focus on higher pursuits.
Hmm.
Higher pursuits like art, like music, like spirituality, like human to human connection. It would be a good world once all of these technologies come together. Let's say your resources are being mined by mining robots, then they are loaded into self-driving trucks by pick and place robotic arms, and those trucks are self-driving and they're reaching in a dark and autonomous factory wherein resources are being produced,
Yes.
and then they are being dispatched to you by drones per
Yep.
se. So I mean, why would you need to work per se? You can focus on higher pursuits like art, music.
Yeah.
Spirituality and personal satisfaction. So I look at a utopian world like that. Now it totally depends on us, both as
Hmm.
entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
youngsters, governments, as to whether how rough the transition between that this world and that utopian world will happen.
Yes.
It can happen very easily or smoothly, or it can happen with a lot of shake.
I actually read about this same concept somewhere. Somebody had talked about it, and probably that was the most fascinating bit which you talked about, like the utopian world, and where people will pursue higher pursuits and stuff like that. And going forward, I would like to move on to the next segment. Although I'm very much fascinated by what you're talking about right now, it's like so crazy and futuristic for me personally because I haven't heard anything like this before. Even when it comes to the metaverse, because I'm a big fanatic when it comes to the metaverse and VR and AR, right? So, as an entrepreneur, right, because you've been in the space for a while, like, what's been your journey? Like, in short, you talked about it in the first segment as well. How's it been for you till now with Twin and other stuff you do?
Yeah. So as at the end of the day, the goal that drives us is not to be an entrepreneur or be a unicorn or a billion-dollar company. That's not the goal per se. The goal that I started with is the reason why I started to do this is very different. As I told you, there are India today needs entrepreneurs are not usually never celebrated.
Hmm.
No offense, like cricketers, film stars, and everything, all of those people are celebrated, but entrepreneurs usually are never celebrated.
Yep.
And with there is this whole transition from socialization, a social economy or a socialist-based economy that has happened, which has led to glorification of poverty. per se.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what we are talking about today is if in your home you have 100 rupees and then you can see 10 rupees is for your brother, 20 is for your father, 30 is for your mother. So you're redistributing and fighting over the same 100 rupees.
Yep.
As long as the 100 rupees doesn't become 500 rupees, prosperity cannot come into your home,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
similarly, as a country, if we do not make products that the world desires or the world wants, products that are innovative, higher quality, and better, we would not be able to flourish as an economy. And for that, we need more and more entrepreneurs
Yep.
that are innovation driven entrepreneurs and not scared of getting into new things, not scared of disrupting particular industries,
Yes.
and then make global caliber products. So today, if I ask you, name one hardware product from India, from a startup per se, one hardware startup in India that has international recognition or made an international product.
I can't recall nothing
You'll
on
not
top
be
of
able
my
to.
mind. Yeah.
99% people will not be able to recall. And
Yes.
people can think about, take an example of Zoho or Freshworks, which
Yes.
are, of course, which have done phenomenal in their own, and they're SaaS-based products. But the thing is, we also need to focus on hardware-based products. We need
Yes.
to make products in India which are globally competent and globally exportable and accredited. And that's how we will be able to transition our economy and our GDP further. So that's the goal which drives us. The and the best way of doing it is I found is being an innovation led entrepreneur. That's the journey. Yeah.
I agree with your ideology, man, and this is so like motivating for me as well, personally, because I love entrepreneurship in a way because my family is I come from a business family, like from my mother's side, so I'm fascinated by how businesses work, and they're not big businesses; they have small businesses they do, and I am really like pumped up when I meet them and talk to them. So the second thing, which is as an entrepreneur, you're also looking at success in a way because you do something, you have to be successful to take it forward. What's your formula of success? Like, how do you see success and how do you go about achieving it?
So at the end of the day, the thing is, success is both as this particular company, but as life's work as well. So I will take it into two parts.
Yeah.
So as a company right now, we have already mastered the hardware, the product to a great extent. Of course, they will keep upgrading as new technology comes in and new collaborations keep happening. Now we are taking this product global. So we will be opening our first global office in UAE because again, it is one of the market that is very receptive to futuristic concepts and innovation and all, and taking it forward from there. We have already delivered some projects for some Australian companies, Singapore-based companies, Canadian companies, but UAE is going to be our first physical spot from there, and then we will diversify from UAE. And we are also in talks with some of the big tech companies
Right.
on advanced stage in terms of associating with them on a both on a strategic level, on a resource sharing kind of a level. Because at the end of the day, no one company can build into metaverse, and
Yes.
even if they are working on industrial metaverse, it needs to be plugged into other
Correct.
partners. So all those tasks are at a very advanced stage. So it's only a matter of time wherein the concept blows up to a global format. But at the end of the day, what we are really looking forward to is, yes, there are targets that in 27 months we are targeting to be a unicorn, and then going not just for valuations and everything, but then creating perpetual value for industries and people with some strategic partners. All of those things are there. But my dream would be to make world's biggest innovation lab in emerging technologies in India. That and my I would count success wherein not March or let's say TWYN has succeeded. That is not the idea or the measure of success. The measure of success will be if that innovation lab can create 1,000 entrepreneurs just like that who make up a product in emerging technologies and take it to the globe and and are successful. That would be the measure of success, honestly, for me.
It's got collective success, basically, right? Everybody succeeds along with you. That's the perfect way to look at it. And I wanted to ask you because you're a futurist and you look at the future in a way. Is there a template you follow to look at the future and how as it should be? Something like that you have?
See, I would always say go down to the basics. Everything goes down to the basics. You need to understand the basics of macroeconomics, microeconomics. You need to understand the basics of human behavior, human psychology. So if you need to predict how one thing will do and how one thing will scale or transition, you would imagine that a lot of technology understanding is required for this, for
Hmm.
being a futurist or anything. But it starts much before that. The technology
Hmm.
expertise comes much later. But you need to see like how government policies are, or global geopolitics is. The face of everything, and how energy crisis that is coming in will keep impacting, and how the
Yeah.
resources are depleting. So all of these things are interconnected, so you can
Hmm.
gradually see a pattern.
Yep.
Once you in isolation keep analyzing all of these things along with a connected context, you will start seeing patterns in it, and you will start being able to predict what is going to happen in the most best context. As I said, in case of metaverse, we went down to the basics. We
Hmm.
went down to the basics. I am asking you, like, what would you prefer? Would you prefer me sitting in front of you and you will not be able to differentiate it's real or not, or
Yeah.
you will prefer a screen? It's a very natural thing. And then
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing that how the technology is transitioning in there, how collectively government policies are being formulated. Right now, of course, cryptocurrencies and everything are being pushed back. There is a great pushback in there. But at the end of the day, there has to be some value exchange that has
Hmm.
to happen over this. And once these banks and institutions and all keep coming in into this particular metaverse reality, all of those things are interconnected. So you need
Correct.
to see, start with one thing, and then you'll start seeing patterns that would build over time.
Interesting. And it's easy to understand as well what you talked about, right? Because the last question that I have for you is about your advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, probably. Like, you've given some advice already, but to finish it off, I would like to give
Sure.
some more.
So one advice, both as a futurist and a fellow entrepreneur, that I would give to budding entrepreneurs is focus on hardware. Next 10 years, this decade is for hardware startups. I know hardware is hard. Making something on a screen or a software and simulating it and doing it is much easier. But making a robot walk from one room to the other takes everything in
Crazy.
you.
Yeah.
So if think long term, if you take an example of, let's say, Boston Dynamics,
Hmm.
right now they are looking for a product market fit. They don't have a network of dealer distributors. They don't have a service network. They're still seeing how where the spot robot will go.
Hmm.
But Boston Dynamics was started officially in 1992,
Wow.
and much before that, where it was not Boston Dynamics, something else, but 1992 proper Boston Dynamics.
Wow.
So 30 years, building in that and not knowing where the product will go or where the product will fit.
Yeah.
So this concept is a little alien to the entrepreneur and investor community at this point of time, wherein investing in startups and getting returns after 10, 20, 30 years
Yes.
per se,
Yeah.
and we're focusing on long-term innovation. But mark my words, this is going to be the thing that is going to differentiate our country in the future, any country in the future. And if we have more entrepreneurs in this particular space, in innovation space, not only you will be able to do well for yourself, your family, your employees, and as a company, and as for shareholders, you'll also be able to do better for the country and the world. So yeah, that would be the advice in a nutshell.
Super, Bobby. I think on that note, I'll end this episode. It was super interesting to have this in-depth conversation with you about futuristic technology and the work you're doing at Twin. And I hope to learn more from you in the future as well, because the future is exciting and you have so much knowledge in that domain as well. So thank you, Avi, once again for joining in on the episode. I'm humbled to have you. Yeah. And yep, let's keep
I'm,
talking.
I'm merely a student. Thank you so much for having me here and asking such probing, interesting questions. Love to share the views. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Avi, man.
Look forward to being with you again.
Same here. Thank you.
Thanks, Divyansh. Good.